Hello guys, and a big welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm Florence, and if you're joining us for the first time, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button. Today we're going to talk about what is it that you can do to prepare your dependent children for joining you in the UK, to prepare your from application to other things that you can actually do in this country to prepare for them for a smooth transition from abroad to the UK and life in general in the UK. So guys, we cannot talk about life in the UK and really not think about our children, because I mean, I'm a mom, I'm a parent, so I'm passionate about these things. I'm always constantly think of other fellow moms who are still trying to have their children over, because one of the things that we do encourage people to do, or that we did when we were coming to the country, was my husband and I came first to the country and we left our two minor children back home. So there are things that we had to do from this end whilst they were there, and also some of the things that we had to do in between, or that we did before coming, so that we ensured a smooth transitioning. So today we're just going to talk about some of the things that you as a parent, as the main applicant, can actually do when it comes to bringing over your dependent child to this country, to the UK. Again, a big welcome to you. So when your dependent child, it's not as automatic to say, if I'm in the UK, then my child is coming. And I'm sure if you're coming across this video and you've been wanting, or you still live abroad, or you're wanting to, I'm sure you're aware of all the immigration changes that were made in the spring of this year, to say if you're on a care visa, then you're no longer allowed, or you're no longer eligible to bring dependents to the country. And again, there's a certain financial threshold to be met if you're to bring dependents to this country. So I'm sure you're aware of that. But then if you had moved to the UK prior to that, or before that, then even now you can still bring your dependents. And today we're going to talk about some of the things that you need to do, or some of the things that you may need to be aware of to ensure a smooth transitioning. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the visa application process itself. You need to make sure that you're applying for the correct visa itself. So you have to ensure that you've applied for the dependent child visa under the appropriate visa category. And by dependent child, we're talking about children who are below 18. It has to be children below the age of 18. Of course, there are exemptions when it comes to things like that, but today we're going to talk about children below the age of 18. We are not going to dwell into special circumstances, as, again, disclaimer, I'm not an immigration expert or anything. I'm just somebody who speaks from experience, who speak from passion and the need to help fellow immigrants or fellow skilled workers navigate life abroad. So applying for the correct visa, correct child dependent visa, is very, very important at this stage. So whether you're on a skilled worker visa or on a student visa, you're applying for a dependent visa. So the visa application will typically require that you prove your immigration status. So one of the things that you'll be asked when you're now applying for your dependent children is, what's your immigration status? So you need also to show your evidence of your relationship to these children. So this can be in form of like birth certificates for them, or adoption documents. I'll not dwell much into these things, but you need to prove your relationship to these children. Also, you need to show proof of financial support. This could be in form of maybe having some funds in your account, or sometimes the organization you work for can highlight to say they will provide maintenance, so you won't need to show bank statement and stuff. But this I'm saying because there are other organizations actually that do not offer maintenance, but then that would mean you as the main applicant, you as the parent, would then need to have proof of funds in your account that you show by the time that you apply for that visa. And bear in mind that these proof of funds need to have been in your account for at least 28 days, and that account has to be in your name. So if you're not applying at the same time, you will need to show that you have the right to bring them to the UK as your dependents. Like this is what my husband and I did. We came to the country, and I think 3 months later, then our children joined us. So we had to prove that we have got a right to bring them, which spans from like our immigration status, our visas and stuff. So that's the proof that you need to show. The second thing that I want to talk about that you need to do if you're going to be bringing dependent children to this country is you need to prepare financial evidence. As part of the visa application process, you need to show that you have enough money to support your dependent children without relying on public funds. So these are some of the things that can aid your application. I know some organizations can take maintenance, can assure maintenance, but then with immigration, with visa applications, things are always constantly changing. You could be asked for additional information, so it's key that you have some funds in your account. With all the noise that's been going on to say people have not been working enough hours, people have not been in work for a long time, you could be asked to say, okay, can we see if you've got enough money to be able to look after these children while not accessing public funds. So it's important. You also need to show a certain amount of maintenance funds for each child. This amount depends on your visa type and can vary based on your circumstances. We've spoken about this one to say some organizations, like I work for the NHS, so they assure maintenance for me. And also when I came to the UK, the beautiful, lovely and amazing organization that brought me had certified maintenance for me. So my husband and I didn't have to have proof of funds, and even when our children joined us in the country, we didn't have to have money in our account. But again, just make sure you do have some in case somebody may ask, because it's not like, in as much as these organizations can certify maintenance, it's not like they'll give you money, it's not like they will look after you, it's not like they'll look after your children. The onus is on you to look after your dependents. Also, what you need to do in this country to prepare for your children coming is to plan for healthcare. Your dependent children will likely need to be registered with a GP within the NHS. This is if you're on a healthcare worker visa, then you know that's guaranteed. Your children will access the NHS for free. But then suppose you're on a different visa, you're on a student visa, you're on another skilled visa, which is not healthcare, you will need to have money to pay for immigration health surcharge, IS, and as part of their visa application process, the NHS access will have to be paid for by the time that they arrive. So you need to make sure that is sorted. Also, you need to register them with the GP. So this is when you go to your local GP. Actually, you can actually get, what you can do is you can get forms of your GP, but they will not allow you to register your dependent children or your dependents until they get in the country. So this was one of the things that I actually discovered when we were preparing for our children to come. We actually went to the GP. You know, I love people that are always ahead, always prepared. So we went and we said, okay, our kids are coming, this is their flights are booked, they're coming on such and such a date. So we wanted to register them with the GP, and they said, oh, do you know what you can do? You can actually get these forms and then you go and fill them in at home, but then you can only submit them, we can only capture this information once we know they're in the country. So it's one of the requirements as well, just so you know. Also, one of the things that I want to emphasize, we're talking about children, we're talking about bringing children to this country. You need to have found appropriate accommodation. Make sure your accommodation is suitable for your children. If you're moving into a new home, ensure it has enough space and meets the safety standards. Guys, we cannot overemphasize the need for accommodation, the requirements in this country. This country, they are quite strict. I know in Africa, we can live in one room, father, mother, children, and everybody else and pets. But in this country, it's a requirement, because depending on the age of your child, there can be health visitors who come to assess the living conditions for your child. So it's always important that you prepare for these things. I do remember what I did personally was the accommodation that I used to live back then. It was a 1-bedroom bungalow. So as soon as I knew when my children were coming, I started like house hunting, and thank God the accommodation that I had by the time the children came was quite suitable. They had their own room and stuff, they had all the space. And so you need to prepare before your children come. You don't want to be found wanting. You don't want to be in a situation where your children are in unsuitable accommodation. So part and parcel of the things with regards to accommodation, your landlord may actually ask for proof that your dependents will be living with you, and so have their visas and documentation handy when signing a rental agreement. Always it's important as well to engage your landlord and actually be honest with them to say, I've got this many children, this is the agenda. Be forthcoming, because when you are found to have broken one of these requirements or rules, you could land your landlord in trouble, and they don't want that. So make sure you are forthcoming, you engage them, you talk to them, they know the situation. The fifth thing that I want to talk about is preparing for schooling. So this is one of the things that you can actually do beforehand, and I personally did it. So if your child is aged between 5 and 16, they'll be required to attend school. It's a requirement, no compromise. They can't just stay at home. So what you can do is you would need to contact your local council to find out about local schools and the registration processes. So unlike what we do back home, I know I'm from Zimbabwe, so what one would do if they were in Zimbabwe is like you just approach the school, you find a place for your child. In this country, everything is done through the council. So you lodge your application through the council. So what is it that I did? Obviously, I checked the schools around, and you can actually apply online, or you can go to the school or to the council and get an application form, and then you apply. But what I did is I went to the school. I also wanted to see the school, so I went to the school that was closest to where I live, and then they told me you can apply online or you can fill in this form. Of course, I had to go and apply online. We were trying out new things, so it's actually important. Now that I'm sharing with you, now you know if your children are going to come, these are some of the things that you can actually do beforehand. I do remember we did all that, I think, a month before the children came, but we already knew, we'd already booked their tickets for them to come to the country, so we knew they were definitely coming. So what you do is you contact your local council to find out about the local schools and the registration process. Schools may require proof of address, your child's immigration status, and the previous school records. But then in my situation, they didn't ask for records. They just asked which schools they attended, the addresses and the contacts. So I just put them in there. So also, if your child's first language is in English, check if the school offer English for speakers of other languages. I cannot overemphasize the importance of communication. Being able to communicate in English is quite key. If your children are moving to this country, it's very key. It's until later on when the kids were here, I don't know how many times the school that they go to asked me if my kids spoke English. Thank God, thank God I took it in a positive light, and obviously the children spoke English. Of course, fine. My youngest, she was 4 at that time, and my eldest was about 7. But they did spoke English, and obviously we highlighted the fact that English isn't our first language, but they can communicate in English. And as you know, I jokingly say to the head teacher as we were having that conversation, say, as you can tell, I can speak it, and I'm sure they can. So, but it's not to say if your child cannot speak English, then it's a lost cause. There's always an option. So they can access the English for speakers of other languages support or extra help to integrate them into the UK education system. And this is for free, again, if they're between 5 and 16. So don't shy away and don't let your child struggle. So for younger children, you may want to explore nurseries or preschools around. And again, because we are on these visas where we do not access public funds, you may have to pay extra for that. So just find out the conditions of your visa have to be honored. You have to bear in mind the conditions of your visa. So also the other thing that you can do before your children come is to research your childcare options. And this can be asked actually even when you apply for a visa for them. They can actually ask you what are your childcare requirements, because you're on a visa, you're on a skilled worker visa. And this is to speak maybe for mostly, I mean, I do talk to a lot of people. I do have friends and family who reach out to me with questions and with stories. So mostly, especially if you're a single parent and you're bringing a dependent into the country, one of the questions that you can be asked, I'm not saying it's an obvious thing that you'll be asked, but you can be asked to say, what are your childcare requirements? And here is a tip and a hint. I've seen other people use this. One of the best things to do is, if you work for an organization where there's a few immigrants or a lot of immigrants in that organization, you can actually ask your employer to write a testimonial, or a sort of I don't know what I can say, but a support document where they're actually saying, well, the company has actually employed a few people from this particular country or of this particular heritage or culture, whereby they are actually assisting one another with childcare. It carries a bit of weight when it's coming from the employer to say it's one of the things that they are aware of. They're actually aware of the fact that their employees have children and have got childcare needs, and they've got provisions in place to assist with that. It's very, very important. But if you do not have, if your organization does not offer that or is not keen to get involved, you can actually mention it in your own personal capacity to say, I live in a community of with friends and family that will help out with childcare. It does go a long way. So also other options can include like nurseries, full or part-time childminders who offer care in their own homes, or nannies and au pairs. Why do I say this? It's because it's very, very important that we prioritize childcare. It's very, very important that in all that we do, we ensure our children are protected, our children are safe at all costs, because in this country, when it comes to children, they don't play. So the government also offers some support for childcare costs, especially if both parents are working or studying. But this is again dependent on your visa conditions. So you need to be aware of your visa conditions. One of the things as well that you can do is to actually prepare your child emotionally. Migrating to a new country, guys, is no kid's game. It's not easy. The same way we do struggle as adults, you can imagine how it is for your children. So it's important that you prepare them for this change. So this could be through talking to them, about the change, about the move, the expectation, and the new environment, and all the changes in place. We did it with our children. Round about the time we knew definitely we were coming to the UK, when our visas were out, we didn't have really that much time, but we began to involve them in certain things, spending time together with them and explaining some of the things. And thank God we had family and friends that stayed with them, and they were actually making them aware of the changes and some of the things that they needed to do, the difference and all the things. So by the time they came to the country, really they were nearly there. Of course, it's continuous work. I can't tell you that by the time they came, they were prepared, they were spot on. No, there's things that you learn along the way, that you find out along the way, based on their experiences at school, making friends, adjusting, things like that. If you're religious like me, finding a church and things like that. So there's a lot that is involved, guys. So but preparing them emotionally, preparing them physically is a good way to do. You can also make sure you prepare for them physically. This is a cold country, and obviously you could be watching this video and you're going to a different country. So again, prepare them for the weather. Make sure they're well clothed. They've got the right clothes for the weather, the right blankets and everything for the weather. So if your kids are old enough, you can actually show them pictures of the area or the school that they will be attending. It's very, very important. I do remember when our kids were around about time to come, we would video call them, when we were preparing their room and everything, we involved them, which made it exciting for them. And also I think it made them a bit calmer, and I don't know. So depending on you, the parent, depending on